Welcome back, radio entrepreneurs, listeners, and fans. I'm producer Jillian King, and I'm excited to introduce you all to the third and final part of the Summer 2025 FBA Family Business Panel discussion. What does success look like in 2025? Next, I will introduce our panelists and the moderator for this discussion. We are joined today by returning panelists Stephen Wilchins, founding partner at Wilchins, Cosentino, and Novins, and Richard Hirschen, partner at Gray, Gray, as well as our guest panelists, Jonathan Jaxtimer and Sam Jaxtimer, the second-generation leadership of E.J. Jaxtimer Builders, and Brian Nagle, co-founder of the Family Business Association and senior managing director of Citizens Private Wealth. And finally, radio entrepreneurs host and CEO of Mage LLC, JDavis. Welcome, Jeffrey. I will now hand the conversation over to you.
Well, I want to thank specifically Brian Nagle and Rich Hirschen, because I think the Family Business Association, Brian would probably correct me because he would do that no matter what, has probably been around for about 15 years. And it's amazing what a little history will do, how many families we've met over the years and talked to, how exciting it's been to sort of watch the success of families. And also some of the great stories of all time have come from these families that we've met. You know, Stephen, I'm going to start off by going right back to the end of the last segment. When we had our break, you asked a recruiting question, human resource question. Can you kick it off for us?
So it's interested, your need is to get employees. And how do you satisfy getting good employees, especially on where you're located on the Cape? And how do you provide the housing that will allow these people to enter your employment as well as have a career at your company? And is there a way to do that on a serious level? You have a lot of good qualities that you could, meaning acquisition of land, you got a lot of contacts, and you have the skills to put something together, especially as you grow. So is there a way to think through that a little more?
Yes, absolutely. It's one of the hardest things that we're facing recently in the last couple of years. Housing on the Cape has skyrocketed in price. We see more and more people that were living on Cape moving off due to costs to the Plymouth and South Shore area and commuting back. We're also seeing several people coming from the islands where it's becoming more expensive to live, Nantucket specifically, and moving over here. So we are getting some good talent on our landscape side. With those moves, it's actually a reduction in cost for them, but also a reduction in pay at the same time. Housing is definitely one of the hardest things here to source good quality talent. Most people get to Boston or other, cities where, they may make more. We have had recently some people move from Boston that are, retiring to Cape Cod and getting, some good talent out of a couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years of, last minute employment because they're bored or they want to do something, which in the short term is beneficial to us. We have looked at several properties to acquire. We did purchase a home and rented it to an employee, but we are looking at, we just looked at one recently to purchase and rehab, something that, maybe beyond someone else's means, but with our resources and our skill set, we can, remodel it at a better price point and put someone in it.
But John, this would be something larger. It would be something like, 30 units or 50 units or 80 units. And how do you put that together with someone else that you do business with, maybe either through a cooperative or maybe a charitable organization? I mean, because this is a real need for not only businesses on the Cape, but also for people that are starting in careers.
We did look at a potential property 3-4 years ago with another local business owner. It was an old motel, right, where there were 18 to 20 rooms that it didn't work out because of permitting and such. That is a challenging down here, but it's definitely something we need to explore better because I do feel that we could attract some longer term people and some better quality candidates, if we were able to provide that.
I mean, there's also the way of doing a joint venture, maybe with someone who builds the housing, whether it's subsidized housing or something, that private developer that, does this. So, I mean, just the thought.
Yeah, I definitely think, with me on the landscape business, it's the hardest thing when, I interview someone and they got to find housing and, it's someone that we really want to come work here. They really want to come work here. And, it could be a year before they actually find housing at a decent rate that they can actually afford.
So just turning it around for a second, and you said everyone's moving to wheres. So is there a way to think about transportation as a group, community transportation for your employees? If you can't figure it out on the Cape, do it where, and then try to figure out a way to bring.
In like a bus or something. It's people in Plymouth.
I mean, Mass General does that for their employees or other large employers in the Boston metropolitan area. I mean, why couldn't you do it with another organization? I mean, just the thought. I mean, this.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something to think about.
Definitely something worth considering. We, as a benefit to a lot of our managers and high level foremen, right? They get take home vehicles, so we're paying the expenses and vehicles and fuel. But we are seeing more and more people grouping together, for example, in New Bedford or Fall River, right? And if we did get enough people to get there, we would have to figure out some transportation to maybe, attract some others, in that general area to carpool with.
Right. Exactly. So from a governance point of view, who says no in your organization, and who says no, or are you able to percolate ideas and continue the decisions, or is there one no?
For something like that, I don't think there would be a no. If we found the right opportunity and found something that worked and, seemed to be beneficial for all parties, I don't think anyone would say no to that, to be honest with you.
Stephen, were you asking in general or in regard to the
In general, not specific to this, is how your governance.
Yes. Yeah, Jonathan, he means basically in general, if somebody needs to say no, does somebody have that authority?
I would say for the most part, again, there's some of those blurred, responsibilities, but I know that Jamie, Sam, or I would be able to say no for a lot of things to certain, either orders or requests from employees or decisions like that. I think ultimately, there is one person that can say no, that can override all of us, right? And that is EJ. But I think there's definitely some things that, he would let us make the decision on currently, and we do.
And does take that role if AJ isn't available?
I would say no.
It's an interesting way to respond to a changing labor market. What other events in the past of the company's history has the company had to change its approach or planning to make it more successful as it moved forward? Love to hear some of those examples.
I would defer that to Sam. I mean, he's been part of, the change in mindset about recruiting and what we spend and what we do on the landscape side. And I'm sure he could speak to that.
Are you asking what we've done previously for, employee events and stuff?
And recruiting events. I know sometimes they have these commercial events in Hyannis at hotels for recruiting.
So have someone that attends all the job fairs on the Cape. We've gone to job fairs right over the bridge, Plymouth, stuff like that. We're advertising on social media. We offer a sign-on bonus, and another big thing that we've got, gaining good quality employees is our referral program. So if you were a current employee here at the company and you were to bring someone else here that wants to work here, you can get up to $2,000 in a referral fee as long as that person is in good standing for 1 year.
And we're encouraging, we're trying to share the responsibility to bring new people in, right? We've tried to instill in managers and foremen that, recruiting is part of the job, maintaining, building a team of A players and maintaining it, right? So that's one of our statistics as we get to the landscape manager. Sam either hits his 70% retention rate, or he doesn't, right? And we want people to be here. We've done, job fairs, in hiring in the beginning. We attend different networking events, like you said, some of the tech programs, or one of our landscape estimators has joined the board of, one of the landscape associations. So we're always trying to network in that way. So that has been beneficial. We've spent, we always want to have extras with staffing, especially in the landscape. Sam has a rule where he's going to have at all times a head count and maintain that head count and have 10% extra. And so we do instill recruiting regularly, even if we're fully staffed, to have the extras that we do need.
I'm sorry, Brian, you go.
I was just saying excellent.
I think Brian's question, one of the things is he mentioned before about affiliating with the school. So, I mean, is there someone on the Cape? Is there an organization on the Cape that you can affiliate with and engage and embrace and get these people? Have you identified those sort of schools?
Yeah, there's that Cape Tech program, Cape Technical School, the Upper Cape Tech and the Lower Cape Tech. and they all offer a wide range of programs.
So what's your relationship with that organization, and how do you get employees from that organization down the road?
They have a few open houses every year that we attend, and then our father, EJ, sits on the board at Upper Cape Tech.
Oh, it's nice to have them relative on the board.
Correct. And John, one of our landscape estimators, joined the board for one of the others. So we are getting some more interest. We did just sponsor a agricultural event the other day where people came from all over. We were the lunch sponsor, all over, I believe, Massachusetts down here for a Future Farmers America or something like that. So we're always trying to engage in that stuff, career days and different home builders, but it is the future.
So how do you mention your charitable vision with your business vision? In the sense, I know you like fishing, but you're not in that business at all. So to the extent you're in the landscaping business, so how do you move your charitable vision that helps the business as well and helps the community and helps the people in need?
So we donate our time to several common areas in Osterville or Hyannisport to take care of rotaries and things like that. At Christmas time, we buy 125 Christmas trees and give them to our employees. But then we also give about 60 a year to local charities, right, to engage with them. We're always getting volunteers from all of our businesses here. Fortunately, in the trade business, we're able to collaborate with a lot of our trade partners and vendors to help donate towards, different fundraisers, different nonprofits on Cape Cod, whether it be Big Brothers or Capabilities or housing assistance, right? Well, we support so many different things.
You guys, it's commendable that you guys do so much, but the only question I would have is how coordinated is it? And how does that coordinate with your vision? And who on the board or board of advisors is overseeing the entire thing about your charitable that would help you with your employees and your business to grow?
That's definitely something that EJ does currently. He heads up most of that stuff. We partake, but we do hope that he'll continue to do that, and we can rely on him to help us with that, and then hand off certain portions of it, whether it be to one of us and or a current employee.
She served as a good example and a good leader. Sir.
Right. Again, I'll make a little twist in the road as we're starting to get towards the end. I think all of our experiences in the FBA, Family Business Association, we meet a lot of baby boomers, and they tell us privately, one of our parents got sick. I had to go into the business. I never really had a choice. I went into the business to work. My parents put me in the business young. I started working. I never really had a choice, and they never enjoyed the business. And it never became something that they loved. And so I want to ask you, do you find the business fun? And when you do find it fun, what are you doing to make it a fun business? Now, I know it's work, so it's always going to be work and it's a lot of pressure. But, speaking, I think, for your panelists, we all picked our profession and worked to be in our professions. And our families were in businesses, all of us. But we made a choice to follow something that we thought was a choice in life. So what do you do to enjoy yourself other than all the activities you have to do to keep the business growing and be fun?
I think for me, Jeff, I always intended to be in the business, right? I wouldn't necessarily say we are forced into it. We were definitely grown into it. I would just sort of natural. It's something that, we do enjoy. I enjoy, building these beautiful projects and working on these beautiful landscapes, right? It's rewarding. We built a good business, and, we're lucky, we're fortunate, and we've been able to, enjoy a good lifestyle from it. But it's definitely, there are definitely times where, business owners, it's tough. Employees these days and employing people is one of the biggest challenges. But I would say that I enjoy it. And I wouldn't change it.
Dab?
Yeah, I think definitely I've always wanted to be outside as a kid, and, growing up into this, I enjoyed every part of it, going to school for it, and then, being able to build something from nothing and, turn it over and hand it over to a customer is pretty cool, especially in the last day when everything's done and it looks gorgeous. So it's enjoyable.
You find it, again, we see this a lot of family businesses. Do you find that the old-time employees, to their own advantage, tend to bypass the next generation and go right back to your dad where it's convenient? And how do you handle that?
Absolutely. That is that is one of the challenges that we do face, especially with some people that have been here, for 30 years. But, we've been around enough, and I think we've proven to people that, we started from the ground up. We weren't handed anything. And, I think they respect that. They know that we know what we're talking about. So, but there are those instances that does happen. I do want to say, Jeff, there was one point in Sam's career that he did want to be a charter boat captain at one point. So, I'll throw that in there,
I understand that. Do you feel that you have the authority to fire people? And I just want to give you a context. There's a person in my book who he built a national company, leading in his field. And he told me that when he worked in the family business and it wasn't his, he said, if I'm going to do the hiring, I have to be able to do the firing. If you're not going to let me do both, I don't want to do either. And I think that's important. Employees need to know that you're not just hiring them. They need to know you have authority or teeth. Do you feel you have the teeth?
I do. I think if there was something that, needed some disciplinary that, that needed to be terminated, I absolutely do think that there wouldn't be a question about it. And I know Sam can speak to that on his own, but I do feel that.
So do you guys feel like you guys could be fired?
Could we? I'm sure we could be. I think, obviously we're crucial to the business, as we do so many things day to day, but I'm sure everyone's replaceable.
I think we should fire Jamie today. He's not here. He didn't show up. We might as well fire him.
What was that, Sam?
What do you think, Sam?
Big fire. I guess I've never really thought about it, but I mean, I agree with what Jonathan said. I mean, there's always a replacement for everyone. So
That is March. There's ownership, right? I think if someone wasn't pulling their weight, they'd probably hear from one of us, but I do think everyone's replaceable.
It's good. If everybody notices it, unless there's a final question, I'm going to turn it over to Jillian King. Any final questions?
How do you see technology and the change in technology impacting your business as you go forward?
That's a really, really good one. We have a younger generation. Most of us are in our 30s. Technology is definitely different. It's come a long way. I do feel like that's where we have struggled to move things along, because we do have several employees and habits that we do a lot of paper things still, right? And on the landscape side, we've implemented a whole software, electronic timesheets and things, and we do need to get there, because there's certain things that could help us tremendously to be more efficient, to be more proactive, and to be more profitable, and to make it easier for the client and the employee. So that's something we're definitely looking at. We have bought some different softwares and starting to implement things, but as we talked about earlier, when you're caught in the day-to-day, it is hard to move certain things.
Jillian?
Thank you, everyone. What an important conversation for family businesses. That wraps up this final segment of our Summer 2025 FBA Family Business Panel discussion. Thank you to all our listeners and viewers who have tuned in for this panel. Be sure to check out parts 1 and 2 and click subscribe just below the video if you're on YouTube, or follow if you're listening on one of our podcast platforms to stay up to date on all our postings as they go live. If you're a fan of our videos, please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and press the bell button. It helps immensely. Radio Entrepreneurs is also active on LinkedIn, so be sure to follow our page there as well for more business advice and discussions. Until next time, goodbye and thanks for listening. We'll be back with more stories on Radio Entrepreneurs.